Welcome to the British History Podcast Wrap-Up Show. I'm Benjo.
And I'm Brandon. And this is Season 1, Episode 8 today. I didn't write down the title of the episode, but Season 1, Episode 8. I got a lot of notes here. So if you're watching this, you're a hardcore BHP fan.
Or if you're listening to it on maybe.
Or if you're listening to it.
Hopefully we can get it out to like the podcast app or something, or to Spotify.
How about, so Benjo and I are taking a trip. A little teaser. We may be coming to you from a secret, remote paradise location tomorrow. If we do, Benjo, on the road trip, you'll have to see if you can figure all that stuff out.
What do you mean?
How to get it on. I mean, we're just putting it on YouTube now, but we'll get it on the podcast.
Some road trip research.
Right. Doing all right?
Yeah, how about you?
Good. What you been up to today?
Well, I had football practice at 10 to 12. Then I walked 9 holes, played some golf.
Nice.
And chilled out the pool. Didn't go in the pool, just was chilling there. And then came home.
Came home and got ready, pre-gamed for some British history, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Benjo, we're talking about, right now we are in the beginning of the permanent Roman occupation of Britain. And the start of this is going to take us all through Season 1, maybe Season 2, but it's going to last from essentially the year 42 42 CE, to about the year 410 CE AD.
I thought we were just going to start saying 42 from now on.
Okay, you're right. I did say
that. You say that?
I did say that. So, as with these early episodes from, I guess, 2011, Jamie gives us the characters. So we've got Publius Astorius Scapula. We're just going to call him Scapula, okay? I'm assuming that's how they named this bone right there. All right, the scapula. Publius Astorius Scapula was the Roman governor of Britannia. So he was in charge. Rome has an emperor, but then the governor in charge of Britannia is Scapula. And the people we need to know are Queen Cardamandua and King Venutius. They are queen and king of the Brigantes, a tribe. Remember, last time we talked about Rome being this organized, collective, disciplined, well-oiled machine front, right? How would that compare to the Britons?
Well, Britons are strong.
Well, Britons are, I'm not talking about physically as people.
Okay.
I'm talking about their organization.
Okay. We'll put their organization as like a well.
No. The Romans were well organized.
No, I'm saying like a well that you put water in. You said compare it to an organization. I was just trying to think of something that's organized.
Okay. All right. I'm digging it.
Well, they're organized, just not organized as good as the Britons.
That's right. They were a loose confederation of tribes. And from the episode, I think I agree with you. We think of the Romans as like just this force of nature, right? And they absolutely were, in the engineering and the building and the organization and the structure and the military, blah, blah, blah. But I don't think that necessarily means the Britons or any of the peoples that the Romans took over were not organized. They just weren't like the machine, the Romans were. So one thing, and we're talking about Romans taking over territory. So the Romans had this reputation. They had this policy, right, of when they went to conquer tribes, if the tribes were compliant and allowed them to take over, the Romans treated them very well. But if they resisted, they took the elbow to them.
Well, I mean, the Romans would probably, if somebody tried to attack them, then they would resist.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, when they came, they knew that they were going to eventually take over these areas. And so they gave them a choice. You can either let us take you over, let us conquer you, and we'll treat you well. If you resist, we're still going to conquer you, and we're going to beat you down, you know. Um, so anyway, when we talk about the Romans, and this is true, I think, of a lot of different societies. When the Romans came in and they conquered Britain, uh, at first, at least, it really only affected the elites, the nobility, right? The powerful, the wealthy. They got displaced, right?
Yeah.
The people at the bottom of the rung, they're just switching one overlord for another, right? I mean, they weren't really getting treated well before, we're assuming. And then when the Romans came in, it's not like they were treated any better, probably weren't treated any worse. Eventually, though, the Romans were taxing the people, the leaders, the British leaders, who had to pass the taxes down to the peasantry. And eventually, the Roman occupation did affect everybody, even the peasant class. You know what peasants are?
Like, no, I know what they are. I'm just trying to explain it in my, like, unworthy people, like
No,
hobos.
not unworthy, just poor.
Yeah, poor. That's what I meant.
Yeah,
Not hobo, I guess.
I mean, hobos are what, but I think throughout history, the peasantry, the peasantry way outpopulates the elite, you know, but the elite have the money and the power. So we talked about Aulus Plautius. He was the conquering general of the Romans, and he was a conquering general for 4 years. And we talked about, you remember Caractacus? Remember that?
Yes.
He was the
remember.
leader of one of the tribes, but he no longer had a kingdom. So we went to South Wales and started to organize, right? And so one thing throughout all this you're going to need to remember is like the native Britons, the Celts, the we're going to get into the Anglo-Saxons eventually, right? But the natives that were there at least from you know, before 400, and even in BC times, um, tended to concentrate or flee to, even today, the native Britain. You have that largest percentage in like the southwest and the north, and some in the east, right? The southeast itself is, throughout British history, is there have been the Romans, and then of course the Anglo Saxons, but the old Britons, native Britons, are concentrated in southwest, like Cornwall, and then you've got Wales in the upper Midwest, and then what becomes the Scots in Scotland. Those are the natives. So, and the Romans came in, and they basically, throughout their reign, they destroyed most of the British ancient history. So what I'm led to believe is we lost a lot of that. Like, what would have happened if they defeated the Romans and the British retained all this history? What do you think? Would have been different, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it would have been a lot different.
So we talked about Aulus Plautius, the Roman general. He and his wife returned to Rome, and his wife had actually been accused of following a different religion. Christianity was not
Was it Jew, like
Druid Druidism.
No, I was thinking
Judaism.
Judaism.
Judaism. I don't know if there were people we would consider Jews on the British Isle at this point. I don't think so. But we had the Druid. Remember we talked about the Druids, who were like mystical priests.
Yeah.
And so Aulus Plautius's wife, Pompano, I think.
Pompeii?
No, I can't remember what I wrote down here, but she was accused of following a different religion, and when she got back to Rome,
What was the religion?
could have been. Jamie says could have been Druidism. You don't know. Maybe while she was there, she started following Druids, but anyway, Alice Plautius leaves, the conquering general leaves, and Caractacus is really put forward in this vacuum as the leader of as much as he can coalesce this British leadership. And so he had to. So Caractacus is rebelling. I mean, he left the island of Britain in charge. I'm assuming with other Roman leaders, but he had to put down this rebellion, and so I guess he comes back at that point to Britain.
Yeah.
And he orders his troops to line up in such a line as to avoid these guerrilla tactics. Not guerrilla, of course, right?
Guerrilla.
Yeah, Guerilla, where you hit and run and you
hide.
Right. So the one thing the Britons were upset about is at Camalodunum, which they knew it back then, modern day Colchester. And I don't claim to be an expert in British geography, but this was a British settlement, and the Romans just basically moved in their retired Roman leaders, and that kind of ticked off the Britons, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
And Scapula comes back and disarms all the Britons that he could find, not just the ones that violently resisted him. You know what I mean by disarm? Like
made them drop all their weapons.
That's right. Took their weapons away. So one of the British tribes, the Iceni, rebelled, and Caractacus joined their rebellion. So we've got the Brigantes, the Iceni, and so the Iceni rebellion was put down by Scapula's folks, but Caractacus's troops were not defeated. And so at that point, the Iceni install Protestagus, I think is how you pronounce it, as the king of the Iceni. Protestagus we're going to talk about him later. He becomes well known as the husband of Boudica. Have you heard that?
Yes.
Yes. How do you know Boudica?
The Last Kingdom.
No, that was Athelflaed.
No, I heard Boudica.
Boudica, maybe Boudica. They mentioned Boudica. Boudica was an ancient British warrior princess.
Yeah,
and her story's gonna.
She's in the Last Kingdom.
No, not Boudica. No, you're thinking of Athelflaed.
No, I'm thinking of the girl that Uhtred grew up with.
Yeah, I can't remember what her name was. It wasn't
Boudica. You should. No, I'm pretty sure because I named one of the fish.
We did name one of our fish Boudica.
Yeah, because of Last Kingdom.
No, because of this.
No, it was.
Okay. I'll look for interest of time. I believe you. But anyway, fast forward 13 years in the chronological story, we're going to be talking about Boudica. Boudica is one of the Boudica, Athelflaed, the warrior princesses. As y'all may know, we have a band called Surrender Cobra, and our first original song, Precious Child, very loosely based on.
Really?
It was more inspired by Athelflaed, I think.
Now I like it more.
But it's not, because in the song we talk about Tokyo. But
well, yeah, that's just.
But I like it. Well, yeah.
You gotta get that rhyme in.
Yeah, you gotta get that rhyme in. But I don't know. I was inspired to write it by warrior princesses. Okay. Anyway, so we remember I mentioned at the beginning the king and queens of the Brigantes. Then you got Cartimandua, Queen Cartimandua, and King Venusius. They didn't get along, husband and wife. They were fighting over strategy and power, and so Queen Cartimandua, she surrendered to the Romans. But the Brigantes, who she was the queen of, they rebelled against her submission, her surrender. And when I say surrender, she basically just was like, look, let me be a puppet queen, and you can be my overlord, Romans. But the Brigantes weren't having any of that. And Scapula, this is where Scapula had to return to put down the Brigantes' rebellion. And then Scapula finally started chasing Caractacus at this point in Wales. And Scapula, the Roman governor, he was so infuriated with Caractacus, and he was planning to exterminate Caractacus' entire tribe, like the entire people.
Oh my God.
So Caractacus decided to fight the Romans in open battle. Notice he said the guerrilla tactics weren't working for him, which I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if the alternative is going to be any better. One of the things that Jamie says the Britons might have used was a ghost fence. A ghost fence is when the Britons may have placed the Romans that they killed, placed their heads along stakes on a fence.
That was like the intro to The Last Kingdom.
A lot of Last Kingdom stuff here, yeah. Last Kingdom was intense. Did you have nightmares after that?
No, but I remember. I don't think I ever looked at the time. It's like literally the first episode, like the first 15 minutes. It shows a head on it.
You're right.
But that's like one of 2 times that happens though.
And Uhtred
in the whole thing.
You remember it was Uhtred's brother.
Yeah.
Named Uhtred. That they named. Then they
What was Uhtred's name before?
I forget.
I can't
remember. But anyway, Scapula attacked Caractacus' hill fort, and again, the whole theme is the Britons put up a good fight. They're brave, but they just get overpowered by the Romans every single time. Romans they were more disciplined. They had armor. They had good weapons, but Caractacus escaped again. And so at this point, Scapula took Caractacus' wife and children.
My God.
Yeah. But Caractacus fled back to the Brigantes to help collaborate. He hoped to get a force together to push the Romans out of Britain and back onto the continent, into Gaul. And so in the year 51 or 52, Caractacus reached Queen Cartimandua. And remember, Queen Cartimandua, she was in cahoots with the Romans. She arrested Caractacus.
Oh, arresting was around at that point?
Well, that whatever form, but put him in chains.
Okay, just like put him in a little.
It wasn't like you get Miranda warning. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say or do will be used against you.
Miranda rights.
Right. They weren't doing that.
Yeah, they were just kidnap, not just almost kidnapping, kind of.
No, I mean
not kidnapping, just like they did something wrong, so
right.
They're putting them, holding them in captivity.
Right.
But it's
the year 52 version of that.
It's sort of like kidnapping.
So then Queen Cartimandua handed Caractacus over to the Romans, to Scapula.
What does that mean?
I put POS. That doesn't mean piece of.
I wasn't thinking
Publius Ostorius Scapula. That's why I'm just calling him Scapula.
Okay, good.
But anyway, one thing Jamie says is Queen Cartimandua, she might have been concerned that if she might have been going with the Romans, like in cahoots with the Romans, because she might have been concerned that if the rebellion was successful, that Caractacus might take over and start ruling her. And she just felt more comfortable with the Romans ruling her than Caractacus. But again, Venutius, her husband, disagreed with handing Caractacus over. And they fought about that. So anyway, Scapula sends Caractacus to Rome. Now it doesn't say whether Scapula went to Rome with them or not, but we know Caractacus arrives in Rome in chains, right? With his wife and his family at this point. He's been reunited with his wife and his family. And so he is talking to the Roman emperor at this time, which is still Claudius. And he tells he's talking to Claudius like they are equals, right? Like, Claudius, you're the emperor of the Roman Empire.
And
I'm
the emperor,
king,
the king
of the Britons,
yeah.
you know. And so he compliments the emperor and basically says to the emperor, if you were in my position, what would you do? You
And
know?
does she give him advice?
Well, I'm talking about, so
I mean, does
the Roman emperor.
yeah.
So the Roman emperor, and Caractacus also says, you know, I'm worth more alive than dead to you. So the emperor spared Caractacus. And then after that, we don't know anything else about what happened to Caractacus. He could have been sent back to Britain. He could have lived his life out peacefully.
Why wasn't he? Why don't we know anymore? Like,
we know he spared his life.
okay, but why was he not written in the Chronicles?
We don't know anymore. Well, again, it's not Chronicles at this point.
Is that lightning?
I think that was just the
garage.
Okay. So there's not Chronicles at this point. There is the start. You know, we have some written records, and really, thanks to the organization of Rome, of the Romans, we have a lot of written records. But anyway, we don't know anything more about Caractacus. Scapula himself dies, it says, from exhaustion. I don't know whether that was
Publius of Scapula.
Yep, Publius Astorius Scapula. But the other tribes continued, even after Scapula died and Caractacus is in Rome, the other tribes continued to lead a rebellion. They even defeated, at this point, a Roman legion. One of the biggest British victories over the Romans. I wish I knew the name of that battle, if there was a battle. I don't know. Jamie doesn't really go into the detail about it, but Scapula is replaced by a guy named Aulus Didius. He took over difficult times. He thought that containment was the best strategy for Britain. Basically, let's contain what we have. Let's not try to expand west or north. Let's just contain where we are.
And just, let's not, like, they're basically saying, try not to risk anything.
That's right.
We're just not trying to risk anything, but we're not also trying to be raided by, or
that's right.
We're just trying to
hold on to what we got.
Be healthy.
Secure what we've got there in Britain, along pretty much the southern coast, maybe southeast coast. So anyway, the Emperor Claudius died. He may have been poisoned by his wife, who had murdered at least one of her previous husbands. Claudius dies, and his stepson takes over. Who's his stepson?
Nero.
Nero. Do you remember learning about Nero when we went to Italy?
Oh.
Nero was the one that allegedly fiddled while Rome burned. He had the big, huge statue of himself built, and he was.
There were like a lot of big.
There were, but it was the one outside the Colosseum that they actually like burned down.
Wait, like people nowadays burn down?
No, back then.
Okay.
Back then, it was a statue that was like hundreds of feet high.
Wait, are all the other statues now that, like, all the statues that we saw in Italy, are those built modernly or built back then?
I mean, it depends, but a lot of what we saw was built then. That's the whole point. Yeah,
I know. I'm talking about the statues of people, though.
It depends, but a lot of what we saw was built back then. So anyway, the word Nero just leads us. It's kind of a segue / cliffhanger to the next episode. So again, we went on a little bit this time, but we'll catch up from another location next time. I've been Brandon.
And I've been Benjo.
Thanks for listening to the British History Podcast wrap-up show.
And
it's like we finish each other's
sandwiches. Well, next time we will be in a mystery location.
We'll see you then.
Complete disarray.